This narrative about the presentation of the Lord is found only in Luke's Gospel. That in itself is curious. Luke, being the Gentile Gospel, emphasizes here the prescriptions of the law. And 5 times in this very short text which we have today for our Gospel, there is mention that they were fulfilling the prescriptions of the law. Curious enough that this is not found in the Gospel of Matthew, which is the Jewish Gospel. We're really not sure if Luke understands precisely all the prescriptions of the law, since he mentions things that don't kind of fit entirely well into a good understanding of the Jewish tradition of law. He has Joseph and Mary coming to fulfill the prescriptions of the law regarding purification, as if it is the couple that go through the purification, whereas in the Jewish law it's only the woman who goes through the purification. He also has a kind of a mixture here between the presentation of Jesus, which is the circumcision, which happens 8 days after the child is born, and he mixes with that the purification rite, which happens 40 days after the child was born, according to the prescriptions of the law. There are many elements in this. Simeon and Anna are part of the story here, reminding us very much of the book of Samuel. Look back at the book of Samuel, 600 years before Christ, and Hannah, the mother of Samuel, brings him to the temple, and the priest Eli, the elderly priest, prays over him and predicts his prophetic future. So there's very much a remembrance of the book of Samuel. There's also mention here that a sword shall pierce your heart. Here, it seems to be a reference to Mary, although in the Gospel of Luke, Mary does not appear at the foot of the cross. It seems to be a reference to the crucifixion of Jesus, but in Luke's Gospel, she's not at the foot of the cross, only in the Gospel of John. And secondly, the piercing of Jesus' side happens only in John's Gospel, but it seems to be referred to here by Luke. So Luke is kind of interesting. It's worth studying. Very much remembering, by the way, the covenant. There are 2 things about the presentation of Jesus here. We're beginning this gospel text in verse 22, but if you read verse 21, it says, "When the time for his purification came, they brought Jesus to the temple, and he was given the name which was given to him before he was born, given by the angel." So there are 2 things. Go back and read about the covenant there in the 15th chapter of the book of Genesis. It's worth reading now. Chapter 15, 16, and 17 in Genesis. And there you have Abraham. He's called Abram, and in the covenant his name is changed to Abraham. And the covenant happens between God and the promises that God makes to Abraham. And then read on in chapter 17, there you have the circumcision. "This will be the sign in the flesh, that you are named, and now you belong to the people of the covenant." This was the ritual sign, the circumcision. And that's what Jesus is going through here in order to fulfill the law. And it would appear very strongly that Joseph and Mary are very law-abiding and devout members of the Jewish tradition. That's some background on this gospel reading. It's fascinating just to try to put it into context and to read how somehow out of the ages this speaks to us in the present day. So what's the teaching that comes from this remembrance of the presentation, the naming of Jesus and Jesus belonging to the covenant? It has to do with the revelation of who God is in our midst, present in Jesus Christ, here in the child. Plato, 300 years before Christ, says, we are fired into life with a madness which comes from the gods, which makes us believe that we are destined for a great love. We believe we're destined for a great love. And somehow this is true inside of us. There's something in our makeup that says the meaning of life will be understood and experienced only in the experience of a great love. Only in the profound experience of a great love will we begin to understand the passion and the meaning of life. I was in New York for a few days this past week, through the kindness of some very good friends. I went to 2 operas and a play in 3 days. It was wonderful. But they all dealt with the agony and the ecstasy of love. The ecstasy of love which is discovered and experienced, and the agony of the love which is lost. That's all of life. We're all that way. Somehow, the fulfillment of life is achieved in giving. Not in hoarding, but in giving. Somehow in the gift which we share, we find the meaning of life. In the things we hoard, we look inward. We're fearful. We don't enter into the passion of life. Goethe, the German poet, playwright, wonder man, he says, there are many risks in life, and safety is one of them. Not to take a risk. So somehow we are meant for a great love. Now, I visited a young couple, and they're from Holy Family here. While I was back there, they live in Greenwich. They introduced me to their baby, Eloise. Adorable, incredible, miracle. All babies are a miracle. They're all incredible, but each in their own unique way. And see, who is it that will draw out the very best which is in us? Who draws out the ecstasy which is hidden inside of us? The child. The child draws it out because somehow in the child there is revealed some unconditional gift of love. And therefore it draws this response from us, a response to miracle. Brings out the very best which is in us, the ecstasy of love, experienced through the child. Somehow, when we have an experience of unconditional love, unreserved, no limitations, it's a pure gift I give to you, then you somehow must respond. It's the measure of the way we are made. When that disappears, when it's damaged, when that kind of love escapes us, when we ignore this kind of love, when it drifts away from us, we enter into a world of suspicion. We enter into a world of limitations. We enter into a world of selfishness, for the infinite, the beauty, the gift of love is lost. We enter into a world of shadows, even darkness. And this is what's revealed in the child. In this case, the presentation of the child is the sign of God being present to us in infinite love. As if you took the child and said, the child speaks to me about God's infinite love. Parents understand this. Even priests understand this, although not entirely. I think I mentioned before, years ago, I went up to the Amish country to spend some time with the Amish people to find out what I could learn, what they could teach me. And before I left, I was having lunch with this elderly man with his round hat, his overalls, his beard. And I said, Alfred, teach me something, say something to me. Be wise, be my teacher. And he said, oh, Father, you won't understand. And I said, well, tell me anyway. He said, no, but speak to me. So he said to me, there's only one good thing about growing old. And I said, well, please tell me. Grandchildren. He said, you won't understand, but I said, well, I kind of understand a little bit. Because the child that reveals the miracle of God, because the child that tells us about love which is not merited. Child doesn't merit anything. Child does not have to perform. The child doesn't have to impress you. The child calls forth the wonder which is within you. Now, whenever you have an experience of gift or an experience of love which you have not merited, you don't deserve it, it's free, it's gift, that's a mystical experience, my friend. That's an experience of God. We are fired into life, believing that we are destined for this kind of love. That's the love which was revealed in Jesus, the child, presented, named as one of the covenant people. And we too now, we are called to be named amongst the people who are in covenant, the covenant of God's infinite love for us.